This podcast is about Tenochtitlan and the people who lived there, the Mexica. The city was founded in 1325 and it lasted about 200 years until the guy who actually made this picture led an army and destroyed it. That man is Hernan Cortez, and this podcast is not going to deal with him. It's going to deal, like I said, with the city and the people who lived there, the world that they built, the empire that they constructed. And there's no doubt that Cortez himself was impressed with the city. By his own accounts, it was a city that resembled the most impressive European capitals he had ever visited, a place that resembled Venice. There was canals running through the city, there was causeways linking this island city to the mainland, and what he found there was about 250,000 people living in conditions that were really more sanitary, kind of more advanced in many ways than the European lifestyle he was used to. So once again, this podcast is going to look at how they built this impressive city. It's going to look at the military strategies that they used. It's going to look at some of the important leaders. And at the end of the day, we're going to see that the Mexica, or as they're kind of more commonly referred to as the Aztec, that these people, the Mexica, that they built a truly impressive empire. And so let's start here with geography. We're going to look at our map here of Mesoamerica, and we're kind of zooming in on central Mexico. There, to the north of what's going to be the Aztec Empire, you'll see Tula. And if you remember, Tula fell kind of after the fall of Teotihuacan, about 200 years after that. The Toltecs, they migrated to the northern Yucatan, to Chichen Itza. We don't need to worry about them. But essentially, that opened up a power vacuum in that area of central Mexico, around the Valley of Mexico, and specifically Lake Texcoco. And so here you see a close-up map of the lake region, Lake Texcoco. And this is really the key geographical feature of this region. So, what happened? The Toltec, like I said, they migrated east towards the Yucatan. And they were going to go to Chichen Itza, as you might remember. So, they open up this power vacuum there, and groups called the Chichimecs. And Chichimec is not an ethnicity, it's not the name of a city, it's really an adjective that was kind of like a barbarian, or really just a dirtbag type person. The people from the north were looked down upon by the Toltecs and people who had been there. But when the Toltecs leave, these Chichimec groups, they begin to migrate south from north of Tula down to the Valley of Mexico. And here on the map, you can see some of their cities: Tlacopan, Texcoco, Azcapotzalco, and the most important one, or what will become the most important one, Tenochtitlan, right there in the center of the lake. And so the Mexica were one of these Chichimec groups, and they were really one of the last groups to migrate south. And here you actually see some drawings that are taken from one of their history books that kind of depict their migration. According to them, it was a pretty rough migration. Eventually, they find some land left in the middle of the lake, and their history records a lot of religious symbolism as far as why they chose that site. But the truth of the matter is, there was no other land. That was the last land available. The good land had been taken along the coast, and so they really found themselves kind of stuck, stranded on a marshy island. So the Mexica find themselves on an island in the middle of a swampy lake, a lake that is part brackish water, really not suitable for drinking, and they find themselves paying tribute to the city of Azcapotzalco. They, along with Tlacopan, Texcoco, and other cities in the region, were all paying tribute to this city, and Azcapotzalco was part of the Tepenac Empire. So, at some point, the three of these cities decide they really cannot take it anymore, and they form an alliance, the Triple Alliance, and the three, Texcoco, Tlacopan, and what will become the most important city, Tenochtitlan, they lay siege to Azcapotzalco. They kill the king, and essentially they become the dominant cities in the region. And they go from paying tribute to a city to collecting tribute from the entire region. So what happens next? Well, the Triple Alliance explodes out of the Valley of Mexico. They began conquering nearby cities, nearby villages, and collecting tribute from all of them. And this is really the guy who got the ball rolling for the Mexica. He was the leader of Tenochtitlan at the time that they took down Azcapotzalco. This is Itzcoatl, Itzcoatl, Itzcoatl. And he was a warrior king. He led the army, actually, for a while, and the city expanded greatly under his rule. His rule, as well as the kings of Texcoco and Tlacopan. And so let's talk a little bit about the actual military and kind of their fighting style. To start, let's begin with the distance weapons. They had two key distance weapons, and one was the atlato, and this was kind of a spear delivery device. It was a way to lengthen your arm, kind of extend your arm. And so the longer your arm, the kind of more force that is going to be behind the spear. They could throw this up to about 100, 150 meters. The second distance weapon we're going to talk about is the sling, and this would be made from cotton fibers, and what they would use was a clay projectile, a clay ball, if you will. And this is one way that we can really kind of see how professional, how organized their army was. Our sling throwers, they wouldn't just pick up any old rock off of the battlefield to use or anything like that. They would have a pouch on their hip filled with these kind of clay projectiles. Unfortunately, this picture here does have a rock in it. But imagine a pitcher using a different size baseball or a golfer hitting a different size ball each time. It wouldn't work. It wouldn't get good. So to get really good, these guys would use the same exact size ball each time to kind of, build up their aim, build up their skills at slinging. And so think about this. The army, very organized, coming at you. You have spears raining down from 150 up to 150 yards away. They're coming at you from above. You have clay projectiles shooting at your face from across the battlefield. This was truly an organized army, even from 100 yards away. Once you got closer, you began to see their other weapons, the obsidian sword, the makwawit.
A makwawit, it's a wooden sword. It was inset with very sharp obsidian blades. These are just like very, very sharp knives. Very brittle though, but extremely effective in cutting. It would be very effective, as you can imagine, as a slashing item, right? If you were to slash him, that would cut right through your arm.
Whoa! Now that was a cut. And you see the cut in here easily, 6-7 inches, single blow cutting right through that. Like easily lethal blows.
So you get past the makwawits and you find yourself even closer hand-to-hand combat with a Mexica warrior, someone from the Triple Alliance. You might find this. You might find an obsidian dagger, maybe a dagger made out of jade. These aren't all of the weapons they had. They had others. There's just some of the most important. They also had defensive kind of items. They had cotton armor, very thickly woven cotton, maybe 2-3 inches thick potentially. They had wooden shields, helmets, things like that also to protect them. So as the battle kind of wound down, the Mexica would find themselves not attempting to kill their enemies, but instead attempting to take them captive. Captives were key for them. These captives would be brought back to Tenochtitlan and sacrificed to their chief god, Huitzilopochtli. And Huitzilopochtli was the god of sun, but also the god of war. And their belief was that if you didn't appease this god with human sacrifices, the sun literally would not rise. And so we'll get more into that, as well as the city, in the next podcast. This one's already getting too long.